3D printing is open to the mainstream with several budget level models now available to choose from, and here we have a system currently developed into its third iteration, which should make it a rather refined unit, the Creality Ender 3. The Creality Ender 3 is at least the third major iteration of this design, revised entirely based on end-user feedback. Creality is one of the few companies that works this way, and while some may not generally agree with getting customers to find engineering faults, it hasn't made the firm's products any less popular. It's not only priced for the budget conscious, you'll save even more on shipping considering it comes pretty much flat packed within an outer box. Here we find all parts required to assemble the unit, all protected during transportation within foam. The most complicated parts, like the hot end and the base, are pre-assembled, so all we need to construct is the frame, adding the PSU, mounting the Y-axis, and completing the electronics cabling. Assembly is shown on a large colour instruction sheet that breaks down the process into 12 relatively straightforward stages. If you're pedantic and like to check everything as you go, it could take up to 2 hours, or if you like to jump in with both feet, around 45 minutes. Creality provide a full toolkit for the printer, including a hex key set, a couple of small spanners, a screwdriver, and even some modelling snips, so you won't need any additional tools, although better quality ones certainly do help. For those unfamiliar with this design, the Ender 3 is an FDM 3D printer that comes with a 0.4mm nozzle and can extrude a variety of 1.75mm plastic filament. For such an inexpensive device, it comes with a sizable print area of 220 by 220 by 250mm, allowing you to make substantial objects if you have the patience to wait for them to be finished, of course. Even so, a minimum layer height of 100 microns allows for some very detailed models to be printed, and the process can be controlled by PC over USB or from G-code files stored on a micro SD card. As 3D printers go, the Ender 3 is a reworking of the same concept that Creality developed with the previous Ender models and the CR10 machines. It differs from typical Prusa style designs in only having a single Z-axis helical shaft, but the two uprights support the Y-axis very well, creating a nice stiff frame. After the build is complete, it's worth taking a little time to make sure everything is square and can move in all directions smoothly. While some may not like to assemble such a unit, you get the benefit of intimately knowing your printer, without the really frustrating parts or any soldering. Everything is well constructed with no 3D printed parts, and it feels sturdy when assembled with no wobble whatsoever. While the screen is nice and easily accessible, the placement of the micro SD card slot isn't ideal, and maybe a normal specification SD card reader would have been a better option. Nevertheless, with the system now assembled, we can apply power, and after a few seconds we're ready to go. Well, almost. The problem with the Ender 3 which caused me the most headache was one that confronts most people trying to print in 3D, bed leveling. Designs like the Prusa i3 and its clones have automatic bed leveling, and it won't take long to envy those with that feature. But with nice chunky leveling knobs at each corner, once you've got the machine dialed in, and it took me a few tries, we should be good to print. Provided with the printer is an 8GB micro SD card with documentation, software and demo files on. Creality even throws in a micro SD card to USB adapter. On this we find the slicing application, although you're better off downloading a newer version of Cura online. This can be used for slicing your model and preparing it for printing. You can use other software of course, and once you find a profile that works for you, it can be directly printed from your computer or from a micro SD card. Printing from the PC does have the advantage that you can send extra G-code and monitor temperatures from there, but the machine can't enter sleep mode for the entire print sequence, so I personally prefer the latter option. So if you're wondering if the generosity of Creality has a limit, it does, and it shows in the tiny sample amount of bundled filament. At just 15 grams, this isn't enough to print much of anything, and not even enough for the demo model of a dog that can be found on the micro SD card. Although unlike other budget printers, you aren't tied down to proprietary filament, so have a wide variety available to you. Models are extruded onto a heated bed surface, so prints tend to stick to the bed much better, and you'll get less of the warping since the bottom layer of plastic is temperature regulated rather than cooling and bending off the bed, an issue I've had with non-heated beds in the past. Noise levels are noticeably quieter than other budget 3D printers I've tested in the past too, which is a welcome addition. When it comes to speed, just like printing anything in 3D, This is dictated by the settings used, and that in turn directly impacts on the quality of the output. So it'll take some time and some prints to get the speed and output quality the way you want it. The GDOG code included with the machine, for example, took a whopping 5.5 hours to print, as it uses an especially slow print speed and layer height to show off the very best quality that the Ender 3 can achieve. And when it comes to quality, I was left really impressed. Now we do have a single layer of under extrusion, and that was due to my filament roll snagging, so completely user error, but otherwise details are all present and the entire print looks relatively smooth and easily of a high standard, certainly showing off what the Ender 3 is capable of. Yes, it's not completely flawless and needs a little cleaning up, but considering this is a first print on a budget level printer, it's seriously impressive. Although saying that, the 3D Benchy boat, a staple of the 3D printing world, gave me this: major under extrusion, causing the print to break apart before it was even complete. Nevertheless, after some tweaks to temperature and layer height and a 2.5 hour print, I managed to get a much better result. Some stringing is still present, so a little refinement still needed, but otherwise I was able to get smooth surfaces, and I'm sure I could get even better with more tweaking. So after spending a couple of weeks tweaking and printing on the Creality Ender 3, my impressions seemed to grow fonder the more time I spent with this 3D printer. The experience did include a few speed bumps along the way as we've seen, but none of the issues I had were insurmountable. All in all, the Creality Ender 3 is an extraordinary 3D printer when you take the sub $230 price tag into consideration. While there certainly is plenty to learn for anyone starting out in 3D printing for the first time, the Creality Ender 3 makes high quality 3D printing easily affordable. 3D printing is still a steep learning curve to climb, but the latest Ender 3 is an excellent base camp from which you can start out on that adventure. The assembly isn't as daunting as you may think, the only slightly frustrating part being dialing in the print bed to allow for proper adhesion of plastic. With that cracked though, the Creality Ender 3 is an excellent option for beginners or makers on a budget. While this 3D printer does have its flaws, the affordability makes it a worthwhile investment. Unlike other budget options in this price range, the Ender 3 is prepared for high quality 3D printing right out of the box. On top of that, the growing community surrounding this 3D printer has led to more and more upgrades. There are certainly better 3D printers available on the market, but none seem to fuse quality and affordability quite like the Creality Ender 3. It might require a bit of tweaking and patience to achieve the ideal print quality, but the high potential that this budget 3D printer offers makes it well worth the battle.